Welcome. Thank you. I'm Shoto. I'm the Sukansu and the Shisui here at SokukoJi Buddhist Monastery, which means I help keep things going, trying to help with the programming and the property upkeep here. I just want to invite anyone who finds value in these teachings to please participate either by joining us for the Dharma talks from either Sokuzan or his monks, his students. Join us for any of the book studies throughout the week, even just one time throughout the week would be great to see you in our Zendo or to join us online. We could really use your help with your practice, joining us, and also financially to help us keep the programming going here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for joining this evening. Tonight, I wanted to talk about a talk that Sokuzan gave recently. It's just been showing up quite a bit in my life as being three important words to remember, or just a powerful teaching. And the three words are differentiation, desire, and demand. Maybe the part from the talk that was maybe interesting or inspiring to me was that he was talking about differentiation between this and that works fine in the relative sense as long as it's a simple situation that you don't need a lot of evidence to back up that fire is hot or that wood is hard or that water is wet. So there's a simple relative situation that we don't need a lot of agreement on, and the differentiation seems to be workable and known without much debate about it. But then when we move into areas of the mind or any self or other, then it just seems like a circus. And that's not how Sokuzan characterized it. But I just remember the part where it seems workable when it's a very direct situation, that the differentiation is just direct, that seems like a workable situation. It's when we first move into self and other or this and that, and we start differentiating the world, that then desire comes in, that we start to prefer one thing over another. So just by starting to notice differences, we start to pick and choose which way in reference to ourself we would like to go. And that's fine. None of these have to be corrected or gotten rid of. The encouragement is to see how we're doing this all day long. And for me, it shows up as that just how painful that situation is to witness how we're making up things about the world that we see all the time. And if we see that clearly, it's pretty embarrassing, because we are protecting ourselves at almost every moment. We want to be someone who's comfortable. We want to be someone that shows up a certain way. And out of even just the slightest differentiation, out of the slightest this and that, we begin to desire and then grasp. And that can happen in so many ways. And it's, you could say the grasping, or I'm using grasping in terms of demand, at least for this talk, that we start to grasp or demand that we get our desire or get whatever we don't desire away, that we start to have an agenda, and we end up hurting ourselves and we end up hurting other people. Even if it doesn't seem like it, we could potentially be getting relief from our suffering temporarily by blaming others or blaming ourselves, or out of that differentiation that I'm on the good side and they're on the bad side, however subtly. Another way that I was examining desire too is that sometimes desire seems like it's workable, or that there's not a lot of grasping happening, but even that movement from one thing to the other can help fortify a sense of self, that if you always have a feeling, and you might not even be aware that you're grasping at an identity just by moving away and moving toward, that there might not be a huge grasping situation, but that there is, just by that movement of desire going back and forth and trying to get here and moving from that you're protecting yourself, you're trying to get something and push things away. So differentiation, we need it. We need to be able to differentiate the world around us just to navigate it, since we are in a body. And beyond that, to work with each other, to interface with the confusion that's in front of us, or the clarity that's in front of us. We need to be able to narrow down what we're seeing so that we can have a conversation about it. All of these things are okay. Even demand and grasping is okay. It's that we need to see it, or that's the encouragement here, that it doesn't need to stop, that if we're trying to stop our demanding or grasping, it's just another kind of demand or grasping. And that's always the case, that you can't get rid of anything, you can't fix anything, but there is something to be seen. So how do we differentiate desire and demand in a way that's helpful to others if we can't stop them? That's all I have as far as a presentation. I would welcome questions at this point. Undo.
I want to hear the answer to the question you just posed. How do we differentiate desire and demand? Or how is that differentiation? Noticing how it goes into demand, desire, and then demand. How is that helpful to others? That noticing, that awareness.
I don't think I was presenting it as that it's helpful to see when one moves into the other, or that like now I'm demanding or now I'm differentiating, although that can be helpful, or like I like them as words, just to those three hit so many of our thoughts or so much of our activity that it gives me a pause to be able to examine what I'm doing with a little bit more slowness, or maybe interrupted a little bit to really see that I'm doing that. So the way I understood you asking it, I don't think it's important to like see which one we're doing. I was meaning more of the question of, since we're doing those things, how can that be of a benefit to people, or how can we do that without hurting ourselves or hurting others? And to answer that, I think what came up for me is just situationally and very slowly, that you're not going to know how to do that, and that's how to proceed. That if you're actually seeing yourself do that, it's not going to be a clear picture as an identity of what to do about it, because you shouldn't know what to do about it. It is the most heartfelt way to move forward in life, is to have a willingness for things to go whatever way they need to go, including your own differentiation, desire, and demand.
Wunderbar. I think what I was interested about in that question was, how is awareness helpful? How, observing that or not, seeing or being aware of don't know. This is your talk. Well, it seems like awareness is what you're touching on. How is that helpful? Seems like it can be more difficult, make things more difficult. Bowing.
I think it can make things more difficult, but an image is coming up is like that we don't know that we're torturing ourselves on some level, and awareness lets us see what we're doing, and we're doing that with our thoughts on some level, that we're pitting parts of ourselves against other parts of ourselves and parts of ourselves against other people, and thinking other people should be doing other things, and that's just protecting ourselves so that we feel okay. So all this shifting around, all this material of the mind, that being aware of it is kind of seeing that we're torturing ourselves with it. And by seeing that we're hurting ourselves and hurting others, I'm not sure like how, or like there's not like a end result that then you come out this shining person who sees clearly, and then you know how to work with the world. So I don't have a direct answer of like why is that helpful, but I think that for me it shows up at least on the path that maybe we'll be a little bit less engaging with trying to put a patch on that or to cover that up again, that we're inspired to keep to use the Buddhist Dharma, to use the path of awareness to see what this is. And it seems like we need to see how we're hurting ourselves or how we're deceiving ourselves, and all the material of the mind is quite sneaky. So if we want to see what this is, we should try to examine it all. Did I get where you were?
Yes, and it seems like that can be quite painful. Seeing how sneaky or even our best intentions are missing the mark. And so it seems like awareness itself can be pretty disappointment, or lead to disappointment in ourselves. Embarrassment, I think, is the word that you used. I almost want to ask what's more painful. Torturing ourselves and seeing that we're torturing ourselves and others. Bowing.
I don't know comparatively, but the phrase that's coming up is maybe Shoto's said it before. It's something about no, sorry, I'm trying to piece things together. It's something like a normal person who feels pain. It's like putting a nail across your hand, but it would be across the eye of someone who's enlightened. Sorry, it's like a mismatch of how I'm remembering a reading. Does it tickle your brain at all?
That might be Trungpa. And I think I did bring that up a long time ago.
So I've heard of it spoken of in that way, that the willingness to receive it is more painful than the one who is constantly covering it up. Okay. Shoto?
Shadow Valley. Is there some kind of hesitant to use this word relief or something better about having that more direct like relationship with pain? Found
Not sure. I'm not sure about better. Yeah, I know that's where you were hesitant to ask the question. Could you ask it in a different way?
Shadow Bowing. When the reasons why we're practicing start to fall away or shift, like how does inspiration keep us going when we can't really find that, or that's murky?
Yeah, for me, it shows up as the vows and teacher being pretty important to most practitioners who have made it a long time and kind of need a hidden devote. You need some kind of devotion at some point. It's a dark path from the point of view of the ego. It is painful, and what is the point if we're not trying to fix anything and we're feeling worse? Why would we keep going? I haven't seen your talk yet, Ondo, but
Don't.
well, yeah, why do we keep going, and what is the inspiration? People in this room have taken vows. They saw its value clearly enough to know that things would get rocky and that you would need some inspiration later to keep going. So that's what the entire lineage is here for, what Sokuzan is here for, to encourage us to keep going. It's why we have Dharma talks. It's why we have a Sangha. That's why we have Buddhist materials, why the teaching is there, because people wanted to help other people and they wanted to keep it going on some level. So they teach because they found it to be inspiring. And then in turn, they inspired others. And even though it gets dark, the encouragement is still there, that it can be done, that there is something to be realized. And if you have a teacher, there's an embodiment of that realization. So that feels like the deepest resonance of inspiration to me, but I think that can vary strongly. I was talking with someone who joins here who had, for lack of a better term, a Kensho with the Heart Sutra and kind of flipped his life around. So sometimes it can just be reading the Dharma just becomes your inspiration, and you don't know why. So I think it can show up in so many different ways and wouldn't even have to be Buddhist or Dharma related too. It could also just be an experience of the truth kind of outside of those categories, or just some kind of insight that keeps you going, even though it might have some grasping that you want to recreate that scenario. But something about it was true and you want to keep going. So inspiration can show up in so many ways, but you're screwed. You took vows, so. Are there any questions online? James, go ahead.
James Bowling. Is it kind of like an getting, or there's nothing to achieve, but isn't there kind of something to undo, like undoing damage or brokenness from delusion?
I think it is talked about that way in some places. My way of understanding it is no, that's just another type of repair. I think that it could be taught that way by a specific teacher, but that's not my understanding, that then it's another ego project to become less grasping. It's just a subtler form of ego to be a person who's better at that. Do you have further in that area, James?
Yeah, I was thinking about how Sokuzan was saying disappointment after disappointment. Is it, I don't know, doesn't it, isn't it kind of helping people have a healthier view that that's their future? It's just going to get more disappointing.
Can you phrase the question again? I just couldn't hear very well.
Yeah. Is it kind of helping people have a healthier view on the disappointment they're going to, everyone's going into?
Is what a healthier yeah.
The idea that no matter what you do, the next thing there's going to be more and more disappointment, and it'll never stop building up.
I'm still not clear on the question. Is there like an alternative view to that sounds nicer? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying, is it showing people that that's what's actually happening?
I think it's a way of relating with people on the path, just and to let you know that you're not done, that it's inspiring to hear that it's going to be one disappointment after another, because it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Quite often when something goes wrong in our life, when there's disappointment, we think that we failed. We think that the meditation is wrong, that our teacher is wrong, and that we have to get out of there, that somehow this is not a valid path. I should be feeling better. I've been practicing for 10, 15 years or whatever. Just so the disappointment is a valuable teaching and isn't taught many places. So that's how I see it being valuable.
Yeah, I was reading Chokjam Trungpa. I think he was saying with sleep yoga, there was some samsaric sleep, the delusion of sleep that never fully recovers a person. And life likes that, no matter what you do, nothing fully recovers you. So, I don't know. How do you feel about that, knowing that there's no way to fully recover from anything?
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
I like what's said. I'm not sure what to say about it. I think it's pretty well said. Just that we're not gonna come out some special person, that whatever we produce is samsara. We are samsara, and that's painful. That's hard to actually do. It's hard to be a fool in every moment, and genuinely, not just say that, but to recognize you're protecting an identity. It's difficult.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Tishi?
Bowing. You ask, or maybe Ondo ask questions about how we are responding when we are trying to receive and we are not receive our own pain or the pain of others. I'm wondering if I see it as an open space for ego to play and be fed well. And I'm wondering if it is not just enough to have a willingness to receive and leave the rest for just observation. Bowing.
Not clear about what you asked. What I heard sounded good. Is it enough to receive and just observe? Yeah, sounds good. But maybe I misunderstood. Could you weave it a little differently for me?
Jishin Bowing. I'm wondering how much my ego has a possibility of engaging in judgment about am I receiving, am I not receiving, am I judging others, or judging myself. And if there is a more simple approach to it, to the receiving and observing, just basically approaching it with the willingness to open myself and not doing too much more. Bowing.
I think so. And I think receiving is also receiving that you're checking in on if you're receiving or not. You need to receive that kind of sticky commentary or that bullshit about being a good practitioner or not. Is that if we're living up to that standard, am I receiving? Am I not receiving? Am I aware? Am I not aware? Doesn't really matter. We need to receive those kinds of thoughts. That's where it gets tricky, because we start to feel like that's wrong, that because that's obscuring our view, that we need to do something with it. But you're seeing it, that is observing, and or whatever works best for you. I think opening up was your phrase about it, and perhaps that's how you could approach it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter? Did you have a question, Peter? I just saw you unmuted for a moment. It's okay if you don't. Okay. Ondo?
Bondobang, is there something to be observed around the identity? You're talking about basically behavior, desire, differentiation, and demand. Is there something more to be observed about the identity or the ego beyond the behavior, Bowing?
I think that reveals itself over time, but not as like a project. It doesn't show up as like a crisp, like here's the ego behind this, or as a thought formation that says I demand this, and then there's my demand. It's subtle, or the way thoughts and behavior arise is with quite a bit of ignorance. There's quite a bit of shutting down with all of our actions and thinking, that it can be quite difficult to see. So there is something to be seen. I think it just takes a really long time, quite a commitment. And you ask, what of the ego needs? Is there more to be seen of the ego below that?
And does it matter to see beyond the behavior to the identity or the solid self or the ego, whatever you want to call that solidity that is differentiating, desiring, demanding, bowing?
What you're asking, I don't think so. I think it's kind of a sham that there's a glowing red dot in the middle of ego, or that there's a core to it, or that there's really anything there at all. So it really is just the behavior. It is just this thought. It just is so incessant and so repetitive that we really get pretty entrained in that. And our relative world reinforces it, that our body looks the same every day, even though over a lifetime it doesn't anymore. So no, I don't think there's more to be understood about the ego beyond what's being received, beyond the movement. And perhaps it could be talked about that way, but yeah, I wouldn't want to make it into a project that there is something that you have to find the ego out, or like see a little nugget that will, or like the string, the off switch to finally get ego to unravel itself. I think it's worse than that, in that it's more like we feel more wound up. It feels more like we're in the dark. We feel more threatened by everything. Is there anything further from you?
I'm just trying to find more conversation about Peter. More subtleties. So poking around to see if there's something more. Like Is there a difference between the work we do on the cushion versus off the cushion in this area?
I'm not sure. 'Cause I don't know what you're doing off the cushion versus on the cushion, but yeah, sorry, nothing's coming up with the cushion. I appreciate you. James, go ahead.
James Bowen. Uh, how is it for situations where there are extreme misfortunes that break people's ego and get them to see the truth? And kind of like the recoiling where a person is afraid of those misfortunes that would that would give them insight.
I've heard it talked about in both ways, like a fool who persists in its folly becomes wise. Or I was reading something from Chogyam Trungpa recently too, that those are kind of the two options. You can either produce and build and build and build until it all falls apart, and then that's one way of doing it, is just kind of burn it out, like walk on ego that you're already building, so just keep going, keep building. Sure, that's a, I don't think that he's promoting that as a way of practice, that you should just go until you get burnt out so you have a possibility to see. But I think that
Is
does
it
to people. Go ahead.
no, just is it kind of a kindness then? I remember like old fairy tales and things where a cruel life leads to leads to changes in someone's ego. Is the cruelty actually the kindness, and is the happy is the happiness the person wants the unkind thing?
I'm not,
Wanting ignorance?
I'm not sure, James. I just felt like, I don't know, felt like you were just kind of explaining maybe your understanding, and I didn't really hear a question out of it.
I was just gonna ask if good and bad kind of backwards.
I don't know.
All right, I gotta go. Thanks.
Thank you. Yishin, you got one?
Can consciousness exist without differentiation? Bowing.
I don't know, the way you're, I mean, I can go in there maybe a little bit and make up some stories, but I'm more curious if you want to know something else around that.
Bowing. It seems to me that we can create a lot of stories through differentiation, but I feel that this is, I don't know, I'm just wondering whether the nature of consciousness is somehow based on those differentiations and stories, that what is called consciousness and perhaps cannot exist. I'm using terms which I'm aware are kind of dangerous, But I'm wondering about the dynamic between differentiation and consciousness as a totality. Bowing.
This kind of reminds me of like what inspired me to give the talk in the beginning. It works pretty well if we're talking about the differentiation between the relative world, the physical things. We can agree upon the difference in the color of orange and yellow. And you could say that that type of differentiation is necessary for a world to exist at all. But in this talk, the differentiation is also addressing that we think we know how other things are too. And even the relatively simple things of we think we know what yellow is and we think we know what orange is, but much better just to not have a differentiation about them, to receive the contrast without the differentiation. And it gets tricky with words of, you know, is that a differentiation if you can notice the contrast? I'm not sure. So the words have their limits and overlaps. Was that helpful, or were you going a different direction?
Thank you. It is helpful, but it seems to me that it is just one first step which I made in it, and I have to. I think I need to think a little bit more before I ask the next question. Thank you.
Thank you. Shoto?
Shoto bowing, is there anything important about that area, like contrast or differentiation, like value and preference bowing?
I think I follow where you're going, but can you ask a further question about it, or what you want to know in that area?
Shoto bowing, is there any, I guess it's kind of coming out of the presumption that we need to catch it or something like that before it goes into desire and demand. So maybe that's the question, like, is there like a sequence in those words? Are you trying to like keep it in the differentiation, like as a practice bowing?
I don't think so. I think it's more to watch how differentiation does slow up and that, or show up. You might be able to see how differentiation does show up versus how contrast shows up. For me, contrast isn't even like, there's not really a comment about it, or like you might not even my thought is like a 4-hour block sit and you thought you're spacing out for an hour of it, but you didn't actually miss that much. You're not really aware of what occurred, but you were in the room for quite a bit of it. So you're feeling contrast, you're present with the contrast, but you might not be able to come up with a lot of information about it afterwards. As far as that being the practice to not go into differentiation, I don't think that's the case. I think just to watch differentiation and to watch contrast, but contrast isn't really something you watch. That's more just out of reception, the contrast occurs.
When consciousness arises in consciousness as a concept, does it displace the conceptual aspect of consciousness and consciousness, thereby removing consciousness altogether? Just curious.
No idea.
If you could answer that question, I'd be quite enlightened about the nature of your awakening. Because I have no idea either.
How many consciousnesses was that?
That's 3.5. The first one was the consciousness that the concept of consciousness was arising in. And the next one was the displacement of the consciousness. And the half was that part of consciousness that is no longer two. Now you follow me. If you believe your thoughts, you can't talk like that. That didn't make any sense what I said. I use concepts in a way to show how empty they are. You can say anything. You can, if you know what this is, you can say anything. You're welcome. You have a question for me?
Or the one that showed up is how do we see that we're protecting ourselves all the time?
It's a very good question. You see it by fear arising. And when fear finds a self, a personhood that is afraid, then we try to get rid or stop or cajole or protect or dismiss the personhood, which is like fighting with dragons. It's unreal. So what needs to be seen is that the whole thing is unreal. Both the concept, both the reality of the fear, the so-called relative reality of the fear is empty of a self, and it's empty of what it shows up as fear. It's empty. So there it's called fearless.
I could just turn this into a Tokusan, I'm pretty sure.
Please continue.
Jishin, go ahead. Thank you.
Dishin bowing. What is displacement of consciousness? I'm quoting Sokuzan bowing.
She's just reached over and grasped my ammunition belt, but she doesn't have she doesn't have the machinery to fire that ammunition. You've got to have the weaponry. Maybe she does. Perhaps.
You would have to say more about what you mean by the displacement of consciousness for me to be able to get in there at all to respond in a helpful way.
Dishin bowing. I will have to ask Sukuzan to say more about that. I think it's the first time when I heard the displacement of consciousness.
No, this is
Bowing.
stock.
Yeah, it's not Sokuzan's talk. It took like 2 minutes of my airtime to get ready.
But you can ask him a question.
No, he shook his head no.
I'm just saying, I don't know. I really don't know.
He doesn't know what he meant by it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shoto.
So bowing. There's not really an intention in the practice to like change anything, and it sounds like that's not even possible. What does having like concepts like differentiation, desire and demand do different than if we're living a life without like a point or teaching like that? Bowing.
In my experience, this has helped me see how far ingrained all of this is, that the word differentiation covers all thoughts. Every thought is a differentiation on what shows up, and having that teaching for me to take a second look at what my thoughts are, and just to consider that differentiation might be shutting out on the world, that might be hooked into an ego with an agenda, that every thought that you have has an agenda to it, that everything is so it's an inspiring teaching to me, because the understanding has to be thorough, that you have to keep going. You can't hang on anything. You can't. And it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. Can you ask your question again or go a different place?
Show bowing. I guess if we're not told that, or that doesn't show up as like a concept, are we just functioning like those things are real? Is that kind of the hang up or the contrast with a practitioner and a non-practitioner bowing?
I think so. I think that's a way to or way to talk about it. Another way that shows up for me is just the believability or lack of awareness around thoughts that shows up for me. So the word differentiation helps me return to my mind stream with some curiosity, because you could say believing it or think that it's real, but you're so bogged down in that you wouldn't even I don't know, it's just magnetizing. It's just a strong ignorance to believe our thoughts. So we need teachings to help us see what our mind is, simply put.
Shadow bowing. This kind of came up in book study today, where I think there was like a flavor of this in our questions, where there's like an assumption that if we get more clear about how we're believing things, that we will stop believing them. And I'm wondering if like that's not the case. Like if we're clearer about stuff, might we still demand, believe, disbelieve, all of those things?
I think so. Yeah, I don't think there's a trajectory to anything. I think that it can get stronger, it can get worse, and I've heard the teachings talk about it in a way that it unravels, or that SokukoJi saying like that it can't stay closed like in the light of awareness, or that it eventually like opens up. But I think we have a lot of preconceptions on how that opening up actually occurs. I think it might feel a lot worse. It might feel like more pain to have an open hand. So it could be more demand, it could be more everything, but more than likely it's just we're more aware that that's what we are. We're suffering beings that want and suffer all the time. And do you have one, Andu?
Very similar. How does the observing of differentiation, desire, and demand help us see that this is an illusion? Bowing.
Again, or I kind of responded earlier that it takes a long time, or I don't know how, or like, yeah, how does it do it? There has to be maybe your own mind, that you've continued your awareness practice this long, that you know that it's valuable. So that's why you keep going. It's not someone else telling you, that like a teacher, that this can be done. It's also coming from you, that you have this inspiration and you can see this and you have a resonance with that it is helpful. So how, not so much, but yeah, I need to watch your talk. Why do this? But it's a good talk title.
Well, divine, yeah, but I'm really curious about how does this observing this activity or our distraction by this activity or our differentiation between desire and demand, all this movement in consciousness, of consciousness, how does that show us that it's an illusion or point to an illusion, point that it's an illusion?
For me, it's because our rudimentary intelligence is more powerful than that closed fist, that our intelligence is inherent. So if we can bring awareness to something, that's really our gift. That's something that everything and everyone is born with, that it's just what we are. So that can't really be, so that's the how, is you're already it. So it's coming forward, and we can keep closing it off as much as we want, but can't be turned off. It's just the case. So how is it's already the case. We just keep covering it up to see that this is an illusion. Okay. We're a couple minutes past. Jishin, did you have one more before I close?
Jim Bowing, I'm wondering about the relationship between belief and attachment. Bowing.
I'm not sure. Can you say more? It seems like belief is an attachment, or just my quick, like how I'm thinking of the two concepts. Belief, if you believe it, you're kind of attached and a little bit closed off to it. And attachment is similar. You could be attached with disbelief, you could be attached with an ignorance, because it's just yourself that's attaching to different things. Yeah, so can you get me closer?
Jishin Bowing, I think perhaps when during the study, something which came to me a number of times was the power of belief. And it seems to me that the belief that what is illusion, that it's real, perhaps it plays a very significant role in that dynamic that it's difficult to see that it is unreal. So this is the reason why I'm asking that question.
Okay, or maybe I can get in there a little bit more now, that the believing is already occurring. You can't stop believing something, but that's just another kind of belief. But I think it's talked about sometimes that the attachment might not be there, or you could say that if you're aware of it, maybe attachment is slightly different. If you're letting something arise and fall, belief or disbelief, and you're not really hooking up a self that's watching that. I can see that helps me differentiate those two concepts, I guess, that belief can occur without attachment, if that's maybe what you're getting at.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll dedicate the marathon.